A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us on this edition of Spectrum, live on Radio 1 FM 90. We are broadcasting from the Central Building, which is the home of this radio station, live on our website, www.radio1fm90.com. On that website, you click on the icon with the word Listen Live. Now, you can also find this radio station on the different radio listening apps, which you can obtain from the apps of your smartphone. You look for Radio 1 FM 90, and as long as you have an internet connection, you'll be able to listen to us from anywhere across this globe. We do value your feedback, and I encourage you to be part of this discussion by sharing with us your thoughts, question, or comment. Use the number 0703-090-090. Kindly send us a text message, not an audio clip, because when you do that, we'll not be able to play it on air. Well, the much talked about Protection of National Sovereignty Bill was finally enacted by Parliament following almost a full month of deliberation by different stakeholders. Parliament took into account the views that had been shared by numerous stakeholders who appeared before the committee and those who presented a memoranda. There's been sharp concern, mainly from several groups, including civil society, religious leaders, and even political parties, about this piece of legislation. Now, it has finally been passed, but some people do not know exactly what was passed, because a lot of focus was on what was described as draconian clauses which were in that bill. One of that which was spoken a lot about was suggesting that a Ugandan who leaves this country and resides abroad automatically becomes a foreigner, issues to do with the agent of a foreigner, and so many other things. But at the end of the day, we want to understand, what is this law about? What mischief does it seek to cure? So today, we'll be having a discussion with two stakeholders who have been at the center of this particular bill. One of them is the chairperson of one of the committees which was handling that bill. That is the Committee of Defense and Internal Affairs, and that's none other than the Honorable Wilson Kajwengye, Twinomugisha, who is Nyabishozi County MP. Good evening, Honorable. It's a pleasure having you.
Good evening to you, Kenneth, and good evening to listeners.
All right. And joining us on the line is Mr. Phillip Karugaba. He's an advocate and one of the prominent people who featured in the discourse of this particular bill. He was part of the civil society organizations that went before the joint committees to submit their views on this particular bill. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Phillip Karugaba. It's a pleasure having you on Spectrum.
Good evening, Mr. Lukwago. Good evening, listeners. I'm profoundly honored and exceedingly humbled to be here. I think it's been 20 years since I was last on your show.
Indeed, 20 years, and it's good to have you back on the airwaves. And probably I want to begin with the Honorable here who is in studio, and for people to understand exactly what was enacted. Now, Honorable, I'm sure you followed the discussion that was taking place in the different fora, media, Parliament, and so forth. People concerned about the nature of law that was being enacted. Can you briefly tell us what exactly Parliament churned out after several weeks of consultation, but also retreat, where we saw some skirmishes here and there?
Okay, thank you, Kenneth, and to you, listeners of Radio 1. My pleasure being here, and my friend and senior colleague, Kenneth. Phillip Karugaba.
Phillip Karugaba.
Online. I greet you and I welcome you on air. Correct that after almost a month of hard work, both in the committees and on the plenary, listening to stakeholders, reading and consulting and back and forth, Parliament passed the Protection of Sovereignty Bill 2026. So your question is, what is this that you passed? First, it's a bill that we passed, like we have passed many and several other bills in this session by 11th Parliament. There is no acrimony, it's not any different from any other. It only has generated great interest and concern, and that, in my view, is extremely positive, that the people of Uganda are awake and would love to participate in shaping laws that eventually govern them. In fact, if you want to ask me, in this process, the people of Uganda exercised their sovereignty in shaping the laws that are going to govern them. And for me, if there's any great lesson learned from this, is that subsequent pieces of legislation are going to demand this kind of huge participation of stakeholders, like it was the case with the sovereignty, with the Protection of Sovereignty Bill 2026. Very, very positive, putting us legislators on notice, coming on board with very well researched memoranda, very well urged views touching laws and taking care of their particular interests. Each stakeholder has an interest, and to make sure they are not tampered with or they are catered for in a particular piece of legislation. For me, that was the winner. I am a positive visit. People to say this is a bill that is going to have a bearing on my daily work. So I must run to Parliament and make sure my idea, my viewpoint is heard on how I would want to be governed. For me, if you ask me, that is the citizenry exercising their sovereignty as was given to them by the 1995 Constitution. So the bill that we passed is the Protection of Sovereignty Bill 2026.
But the question then would be, with all these memoranda submitted, do you think you listened to these stakeholders? Because some of them, for instance, demanded a total withdrawal of that particular bill, and one of those is actually your colleague who is on the line.
Well, we listened. We took into account. It was not a voting that so once these people say this is what you do. No, Parliament is under obligation to legislate. Okay? And so we didn't have to throw out the baby with bathwater. No, all you do is that you clean. You get out the baby clean. If the bill certainly the bill came to us with rough edges, we smoothened it. It is now a smoother and nice piece of legislation that we have presented on the floor of Parliament, and it was passed.
All right. Now, let's compare what was brought to you and, like you say, what you smoothened.
Yeah.
You are now saying it's a better piece of legislation.
Yes.
Let's look at some of the things. The bill which was brought before you had some tough clauses declaring Ugandans who live abroad as foreigners, giving the minister too much power, including, you seeking permission before you can receive certain amount of money, transact. There were a number of issues in that particular bill, and those ones in particular caused a lot of acrimony. Do you think those issues have been addressed? How did you address those issues?
Thank you so much. Clause 1, for example, that dealt with definitions. It had what you can call drafting overreach. It was not particular. It was like laying the net so wide. So who exactly are you intending to catch in this kind of... And ended up touching on people it never intended to touch. For example, declaring that a foreigner was anybody living outside the borders. That was acrimonious. And that's exactly what brought the interest that you saw and the concerns that we had to address. So what did we do with that? We surgically narrowed the definition of a foreigner to mean a non-Ugandan. As simple as that. But for a Ugandan living outside the boundaries of Uganda remains Ugandan, because that the right is granted by the Constitution, and it is only him, that Ugandan, who can renounce that citizenship. By the way, even those who have dual citizenship, because the laws accept that. You can take up citizenship of another country and Uganda. And
now,
yes.
so what particular mischief do you address about someone called a foreigner? Because we already know that someone who is not a Ugandan is a foreigner.
Yes.
So of what particular interest is this law on that person described as a foreigner?
So a foreigner now is a non-Ugandan in this case. A foreigner,
which is already non-fact.
Absolutely, but also a company, okay? A company, a registered company elsewhere is also a foreigner in this case. And so by defining that, then we want to, so what, clause 2, if that foreigner commits this offense, is treated as what? So that's the beauty of definition, is that it defines who a foreigner is and who a non-foreigner is, and then activities of what it intends to do, and that's how you legislate. So we defined it. We removed the vagueness. We removed that broad spread that the draft had, and I thank Ugandans, especially in the diaspora, who made what I can call constructive noise. Their noise was loud and clear. They sent in their memoranda. They had they grouped themselves into an organization called the Global Diaspora, and they have they even through their own system using AI did consult other Ugandans, 32 other countries around the world, and they developed their views and sent us a memorandum. And we connected them, gave them a hearing about 1 hour, 20 minutes, and they read to us their memorandums. They asked questions. We asked questions. They responded. And I'm happy to report that we listened. And on that one, they scored.
All right.
And the drafters lost.
So what activities under this law can't a foreigner and a Ugandan engage in? Because
a foreigner in this case,
that's a very important aspect there.
A foreigner in this case. So you can go to clause 2. Clause 2 of the bill, and I'm sure my friend is listening. So let me read clause 2 carefully so that people can understand.
Please.
So that you know what you are supposed to do and what you are not supposed to.
Very important aspect.
Absolutely. Because that's what exactly what we should be doing now, sensitizing the population.
For people to understand clearly.
This is no longer the case. The case now is this. So clause 2 say, for avoidance of doubt, this act applies to an agent of a foreigner who engages in any of the following activities through any means, including the use of digital platforms. 1, engage in political activities in Uganda to further the interests of a foreigner. That's the activity.
What exactly is that?
No, how do you understand it? This is plain English. If you engage in activities that, the interests of Uganda are known. If the interests of a foreigner or a foreign country, for that case, is to overthrow the government in Uganda, and then you, acting as their agent, you involve yourself, which you choose, involve yourself in doing that, then you cross the red line as far as this law is concerned. If you solicit, if you collect, if you disburse or dispense contributions, money, loans, or other things of value for the purpose of financing or sponsoring political activities to further the interests of a foreigner, not Ugandan, then you cross the red line.
So if I'm a political party and I'm receiving funds from
That's
abroad...
That's absolutely in order.
It's in order?
Yes.
No political party will be affected, no political actor
this law
will be
does
prosecuted.
not restrict anybody from getting money from abroad, provided you declare and you account for it. If money came for purposes of building a hospital and you build a hospital, that's absolutely in order. If this money came for building a school and you have built a school, the government has no problem with you. But if this money came to, I'm now thinking, to mobilize a rebellion, and you do that, then you are crossing the red line. Because that's not in the interests of Uganda.
Do we also describe what a rebellion is? Because
a rebellion, I use it as an example.
An example.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So doing politics is completely okay. People should not be worried about
but
that.
But we are engaged in politics. Even in acting, this is being engaged in politics.
You know, there's been a notion that some political actors have been receiving money from abroad to support their political activities, and they could be a target of this law.
I don't know. But as long as you declare the source of that money and you account for what you received it for and what you have done.
In declaration, doesn't the minister have the power to hold this money?
I agree entirely. We greatly reduced the power of the minister. First of all, we put timelines. You can put your application, it cannot take more than 14 days. He cannot just deny it. He has to give reasons for denial. And if you are dissatisfied with the minister's position, you appeal. All these things were not there. 2, it's also not the minister who receives and approves. There is a body before that must follow the requirements. And if you satisfy the requirements, and so they satisfy the requirements, they forward to the minister for purposes of approval. So we trimmed greatly the powers of the minister, and we made it look normal.
So the minister is subject to oversight from other institutions.
Yes. And if you are not satisfied with that, you appeal.
There's an issue which was being explained on the floor before we go to Phillip. The issue of a minister taking action only if he gets a court order. Can you explain a little bit of that?
I beg your pardon?
A court order.
If a court order orders.
A court order.
Yes.
There's where we saw a discussion and the conclusion
certainly court orders are supposed to be obeyed by all, whether minister or not. Court orders are court orders.
What was that in regard?
I don't recall correctly, but what I know as a principle of law is that if a court of competent jurisdiction issues an order, it is obeyed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, let's go to Mr. Phillip Karugaba, who is joining us on the line. Phillip, you were one of those people who was, very opposed to the bill. You've had some of the amendments that have actually been made.
Some of them he suggested.
We would like to hear from you whether you're now happy with the kind of bill that has finally been churned out by Parliament.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lukwago, and good evening, Honorable Kajwengye. It was really a pleasure appearing before you. Thank you for the courtesy. Yes, but I think first point is this bill we are debating on the website of Parliament. Is it readily available to Ugandans using government resources?
Are you asking me?
I think he's asking you.
Yes, Honorable.
The report that the committee presented is readily available. You can read it. And there were extremely few minor amendments to the reports.
My question was on the bill and your report on the website of Parliament, where citizens can go and
I can share the report with you, because what we discussed is now a public document, Phillip.
Well, maybe you need to speak to the process, the legislative process. When the bill is passed, does it automatically go on the website of Parliament?
No.
Or what happens?
Okay, when the bill is passed, I am now the editors of the Hansard must be putting together the T's, crossing the T's and dotting the I's. And once they complete that, then they send it to His Excellency the President for assent. The President reads through. If he is not comfortable with the bill as it was passed, he tosses it back to Parliament.
However, the President seems to be happy going by what he posted on
okay, but you asked me for the process. If, however, he is comfortable with it, he puts his signature, that is, he assents to it, and it becomes law. Yes.
All right. There we have it, Phillip, very quickly. Let's look at the substance. Like he talked about the amendments that were addressed, the things that were of great concern to members of the public and the stakeholders you came with to Parliament.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Lukwago. The point I'm making on the parliamentary website is that these are public documents. A citizen should have an address to go to receive it. okay, from across the country, access to information. And the Parliament website has got the laws going back so many years, okay, except for this one, 2026 is not there yet. We've raised it many times, it's not been posted. That's the point I'm making. Now, let's continue on the content of the bill. Again, I want to thank Honorable Kajwengye. He said he listened and they did a good job on listening. They were meticulous in tracking the comments that were received, and they did radical surgery to the bill. That is all agreed, and we thank them for that. Did they go far enough? That's the second leg we shall discuss. Let me say from the beginning, like he used the analogy of a net. They had cast a net so wide, it caught many things, from crocodiles to ngege, to mputa, to semutundu, to mukene. Everybody was in that net under this sovereignty bill. The banks, the insurance companies, Jaja, the diaspora Ugandans, the churches, the mosques, you name it, everybody was there. That is what caused the crisis. That's when the Governor Bank of Uganda said that we risk a massive depreciation of our currency. We're shooting ourselves in both feet. Okay? That is what caused a lot of attention on this issue. So where are we today? The bill as passed gives exemptions to everybody who has a license and operates in a regulated sector. It gives an exemption to every lawful capital flow. Diaspora Ugandans are out of it. Their money is coming to their people here is out of it. A bank being recapitalized is out of it. Okay? Lawful capital flows were exempted. Everybody who operates in the licensed sector is exempted. Okay? In fact, we wonder, okay, who's in the net? Who is in the net? Who is in the net now? Who is it governing? Okay, who is it governing?
You heard about the foreigner. You heard about the foreigner.
Or the agent of a
foreigner. The foreigner and the agent of the foreigner.
Yes, I'm continuing. The example is given is that if an agent of a foreigner sends me money to organize a rebellion, then I'm caught. But of course, there's a penal code there. It was already there. So there's nothing new that this act will do in that respect. The other offenses like economic sabotage, interfering with the operations of government, constitutionally doubtful. What does interfering mean? There's an offense called interfering with the operations of government. What does the word interfering mean? I used the expression okuhabura to give guidance. If someone is driving a bus, the movement bus, and I tell him, boss, there's a pothole there, am I interfering? In Luganda, it's okuwabula. Nantabuulidwa. Alisabala obwabumba. Okay? What is interference exactly? Now, my point there is that these offenses are so vague that they will not stand the test of constitutionality that requires legal certainty. Look at economic sabotage. Okay? It flies in the face of freedom of expression. And what really is surprising is that the Constitutional Court, Justice Irene Mulyagonja, last month ruled on a new standard for freedom of expression and speech in Uganda, using international conventions. And the bottom line is you can no longer criminalize speech. You can no longer criminalize speech. So my question still remains, okay, what else is in this bill? What is it going to do? And I don't mind, let it be there. Maybe just to say it may be abused, but it is really being emptied. Somebody said, yes, that the thief is running away with your sovereignty, and you cover your own indulu, and he drops. Mr. Lukwago. I think let's make it a debate. I'll wait.
All right. We're going to go for a short break, but I would like to encourage you to hold the line. When we return, I'll ask the Honorable to respond to these questions that you've put across. Stay tuned, Radio 1 FM 90, but keep your comments coming via the WhatsApp line 0703-090-090. In the next segment, we'll be putting some of these concerns that you express via the WhatsApp line to the guests who are on this show. Today, we are looking at a post-legislation analysis of the National Sovereignty Protection Bill, which was passed by Parliament recently. The question is, what next? Stay tuned, Radio 1 FM 90. We continue after this break.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Well, thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum, live on Radio 1 FM 90. We are looking at post-legislation analysis of the Sovereignty Bill. What next? My two guests, Honorable Wilson Kajwengye, Twinomugisha, he's the Nyabshozi County MP and chairperson of the Defense and Internal Affairs Committee, one of the committees that scrutinized the bill and cleared it for the consequence enactment by the whole House. And Mr. Phillip Karugaba, an advocate and prominent stakeholder, one of those people that contributed to the legislation, and according to Honorable Wilson here, some of the recommendations he made together with other stakeholders were respected before the final bill was, before the bill was enacted. Now, Honorable Kajwengye, we've heard from Phillip there. He still has reservations, and from his submission, he suggests that this law might be redundant, but he also raises a number of key issues, including economic sabotage, which also affects the sector where I work from. As a media house, if I publish or have a discussion about the state of our economy, where people raise a number of issues, it might be perceived as economic sabotage, and I might be prosecuted. Yet, the laws allow us to have freedom of expression and even access to information.
But first of all, I want to thank Council Phillip Karugaba for acknowledging that we actually put in our best. Thank you so much.
You said surgical.
And I take this as a compliment, and I share it with the rest of my colleagues on both committees, Defense and Internal Affairs and Legal and Parliamentary Affairs. But thank you also for having appeared and for having really inspired and convinced us. A prohibition of economic sabotage, it's actually clause 13 of the bill. Let me read it. Prohibition of economic sabotage. An agent of a foreigner who, underline, knowingly publishes false information or participates in any disruptive act or activity that weakens, undermines, or damages the economic system or viability of a country to cause economic disruption, insecurity, or instability, commits an offense of economic sabotage and is liable on conviction, certainly. So here, we brought in the element of mens rea. Kenneth, if you knowingly publish false information about me, you know you are committing an offense, right? You have freedom of expression, but freedom goes with responsibility. In this case, if you do it knowingly, then you are committing an offense. As simple as that.
From the side of the media, I would like to agree with Karugaba that indeed there are even laws in place that punish anyone who does that. If I'm to publish a story, you should have a say. I should reach out to you and balance the story so that the facts are put there.
But in the first case, if you knew this story was wrong, why would you go ahead and publish it? I'm processing information. I mean, not know whether it's true or not. This era, where you can cross-reference, where you can get facts, where you had Phillip talk about the right or access to information. Why would you go ahead knowingly that this story is false and it can cause disruption, but you go ahead and publish it? So I said, while there is freedom of expression, there is also a responsibility that accompanies it. Yes, Philip raised that, and I thought I have answered it. The other, of course, prohibition of interfering with operations of government, that is prohibition of interfering with the electoral processes. You see, in all this, because if Ugandans, like they turned up recently in January, on January 15th, and voted for a government of their choice, 71%, and then some foreigner elsewhere is not happy about it, and then he uses, and I'm sorry to say, I'm sorry for this. It's a wrong example, isn't it? But please accept.
It may not be a wrong example. Because
are you planning to do that?
No, I will give you an example.
Okay.
The European Parliament sits and talks about how the election in Uganda was not free and fair.
Do you remember when the Americans...
Or a congressman.
Do you remember when the Americans were up in arms saying the Russians changed they tampered with their elections? Why? So why would it be okay for any other? Why would the Americans quarrel, and for us somebody should have opportunity to change the way Ugandans want to be governed? That is the sovereignty that this law is protecting. If 71% of the Ugandans are saying we want President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, but somebody somewhere across borders does not like it, why would he find it easy to use an agent here and change the sovereignty of Ugandans?
Do you describe who an agent is? Because it's a thing that is cross-cutting in all the clauses.
Are you planning to
agent,
be one?
Agent. I want to understand, how do you determine who an agent is?
The one who registers as an agent of a foreigner, because it's allowed. Yes. You register as an agent of a foreigner, and registration is no offense. You are not committing anything. In fact, failure to register, and you find where you are carrying out your interests of a foreigner, you had not even registered for that, is itself an offense.
And I was about to ask you whether you know of any people who have registered as agents of foreigners.
No, maybe because there wasn't law. Now there is, so you should ask when the implementation starts, who actually has registered as an agent of a foreigner.
Quite interesting issue.
Very.
To define who an agent is. I'm trying to understand, because like Phillip said, there's a possibility the law could be abused, because it is.
And you know, when the law is abused,
it is the government in power who can determine whether you are an agent of a foreigner or not.
I hear you. I hear you loud and clear. And Phillip knows what happens when the law is abused. You challenge it. You challenge that person abusing the law, but even the law itself. And the beauty about our democratic dispensation in Uganda is that it gives you opportunity to even go ahead and challenge the law. He actually alluded to it. Yes. Yes. So,
is there any other thing you'd like to explain?
Okay.
Because he thinks the law is redundant.
Well, I do not think the law is redundant.
It does not cure any mischief.
It actually does, because I thought he would, because he had asked about it, and I came ready to allay his fears. That if you have changed each and everything, why didn't they? But of course, Philip Karugaba wouldn't ask such a question. But I've had it on discourse.
He actually said it. He said it that he said actually he actually used Uganda. There is no, if it's if I use an example of a meat, it's a bone. That's his analysis.
And for me, that's why I'm saying, in doing this, the people of Uganda, through their members of parliament, elected representatives, have exercised their sovereignty to get a draft that had draft overreach, that was meandering here and there, and they exercised their sovereignty and surgically through their members of parliament, through the committee that I chaired and the committee that my colleague Honorable Baka Mugabe chaired, to surgically turn it into a smooth and nice law that we passed the other day. That honorary commentators now talk about procedures and this, but they have no particular quarrel with a particular clause X or Y.
All right, Phillip, I'm back. I'm back with you. You have no any particular quarrel. You are satisfied. That's what Honorable Kajwengye suggests.
No. We are going to the Constitutional Court. That is season 2. And Ugandans are invited to show as much interest in those proceedings as they did in the proceedings before Parliament. I would like to stick with economic sabotage. Honorable Kajwengye says that the inclusion of mens rea is the differentiator. Okay? But false news, the offense of false news, was nullified by the Supreme Court in 2004 in the Penal Code, Section 50 at the time. The seminal judgment of Honorable Justice Mulenga, Joseph Nyamihana Mulenga, may he rest in peace. Okay? He established freedom of speech. Then it is necessary to lubricate democracy. For people to exchange ideas, there must be a freedom of speech. Okay? So false news was nullified. Last month, criminal defamation was nullified. Okay? This is a new standard where we are on freedom of speech. So you can't have, in 2026, an offense of publishing false news. Okay? And Honorable Kajwengye says, why do you do it? So be it. It's necessary we talk. The Constitutional Court has ruled, the Supreme Court has ruled, there is no punishment for that. Okay? And this is a new era. We are not in a means days where it was freedom of speech that was assured, but freedom after speech was another matter. Okay? Today we can speak freely. Now, Honorable Kajwengye says when the law is abused, you have recourse. Our comrade Malema Vidiz is in prison over a regulation by the Uganda Communications Commission that revives these offenses of false news from 2004. Okay? Now, it's an abuse. Even the Director of Public Prosecutions knows that that will fail when tested before the Constitutional Court. But he also knows that the Constitutional Court is going to take 2.5 years to resolve that. He also knows that if Malema Vidiz is convicted in the meantime, the Constitutional Court will not reverse that conviction. Okay? So I take no comfort that the law can be abused and we seek recourse. We should resolve the issues now. That's why the turnout before Parliament was massive. I don't believe in not interrupting someone who's making a mistake.
All right, but I want to put it to you that President Yoweri Museveni has congratulated the MPs for passing that particular law. So in a few days, if it is transmitted to him, he might actually sign it into law before he actually takes oath, because he's still legally the President of the Republic of Ghana. Did you read through the congratulatory message of the President, and do you have anything to say about it?
Massively, thank you very much. Yes, we have written a 4-page response to the President's congratulatory message. Okay? He called it shameful that the citizens of the country exercised their sovereignty in Article 1 and in Article 38 to participate in their own governance. Okay? So we've responded massively, and we've asked the President that he should not assent to the bill. Okay? The bill, 18 out of 30 clauses were amended. 5 new definitions were brought in. The whole scope of the act was reoriented, as Honorable Kajwengye has said, from focusing on money, cross-border transfers, like the governor identified. Now they're looking at people engaged in political activities. Okay? That's the conceptual rebasing of the whole act. Okay? The recasting of criminal offenses, limiting them to agents of foreigners, including mens rea, lowering custodial sentences and fines, handcuffing the minister's powers. Okay? Then I call it the exemptions bonanza. Okay? Okay? Everybody was exempted. It's a bonanza like the Mabati saga. The bill is not the same bill that the public commented on. Okay? And the precedent in Parliament is that it should then be withdrawn, resubmitted for public comment. We didn't comment on concepts like political activities, okay, which are now central to the whole bill. Okay, we didn't comment on interests of a foreigner. We didn't comment on what interests of Uganda is. Okay, what government policy is and what foreign policy is. All these things were not subject to public comment. So
Right.
we've asked the president,
Good.
don't sign, have the bill returned to Parliament. Parliament has it withdrawn and reintroduced with public commentary.
All right, very quickly before we bring in the views of the listener, you heard there from Phillip there with that conclusion he made. It seems to suggest, like many other people who have been on this platform before, that this particular piece of legislation is just about President Yoweri Museveni, who or whoever is likely to replace him as president, should he choose to retire, and the NRM party to consolidate itself in power and knock off it would be competitors by simply, reducing or infringing on their political activity, looking at the sources of money, and without money in politics, you can't go very far. Honorable Kajwengye, what would you say that Kajwengye, taking into account even the congratulatory message that came in from the president?
Well, that actually shows the president has been following what was happening throughout the process of scrutinizing this bill. Secondly, I take it that Councillor Phillip Karugaba is putting us on notice that he's going to the Constitutional Court to challenge this. Again, let me reiterate that that's the beauty about Uganda's democratic dispensation. Us, as Parliament, we have done our job. If somebody is not happy with what Parliament has done, he has a right to challenge it. That's the beauty. But two, and importantly, Phillip Karugaba, it's not always that every bill Parliament has passed, you've been called to put in your views. Because Parliament is different from a delegates' conference, isn't it? Some bills, we pass them without even asking you. But you voting Kenneth Anderson Lukwago or Kajwengye or Karugaba, he goes and deliberates on your behalf. In this case, we gave you opportunity to voice out your concerns, and you excellently articulated them before the committee. It's not that what we now come up with, we must again bring it back to you. No. You did your best. Let Parliament also address, and this is exactly what happened.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's now go to the view of the listener who has been with us from the time this show began, and I'm going to read out some of the comments very fast. We begin with Ham, who is listening in from Entebbe. Ham writes in and says, the moment I heard the president congratulating the NRM MPs for passing the bill, I automatically knew it was his personal piece of work, most definitely to cushion the regime against the same methods they used to determine and topple regimes they fought. It wasn't for nationalistic objectives at all. That's Ham there in Entebbe. Then we have Abriga listening in from Bombo. The law is not about sovereignty of Uganda, but about protection of gains, which NRM got during 1986, blocking opposition, blocking NGOs, etc. He caps it up by saying, RIP Uganda. We have a comment coming in from Alex Otim. No, not Alex Otim, another listener who says, I want to acquire why the current and outgoing parliament was headed expeditiously to pass this bill. What was so urgent to cure this bill, urgent to cure that this bill could not wait for the 12th parliament to soberly digest the bill before passing it? Or should we conclude they were bribed to pass the bill? What I feel more urgent now is for parliament to microscopically and macroscopically inquire into the chaotic election we just held, when the actions of the government entities emitted violence on fellow citizens and the rampant vote theft that was widespread. These actions of treating citizens the way we also is what could potentially be a real present danger to our sovereignty, and not the actions of foreigners entities as alleged. That's a comment that comes in from Apollo there with that contribution to this discussion. Another comment comes in from Jimmy Abima, listening in from Mukono. He writes in and says, good evening, Spectrum. I am really disappointed in the Parliament of Uganda, but they forgot one thing that doesn't change in this world, that is change itself. If you take all the bills being passed, for example, Sovereignty Bill and the UPDF Act, they are political bills only brought to ring-fence their position in power and fight the opposition parties. But one day some of the laws will catch up with them. I thought Parliament was representative of Ugandans, but little did I know that Parliament is now representative of the regime. Please, no one is more Ugandan than others, so don't only work to oppress others for God and my country. Then we have another comment coming in from another listener. Onesimus writes in and says, and my question is, can 2 million help someone overthrow the government? I one time went to a Forex Bureau to receive payment of that amount, but I was instructed to present an ID, which I did. Then I was asked to present an ATM card. I was asked to disclose where I stay, LSC1 area, where I live, etc. Why all these? That's a comment from Onesimus there. Another comment, please ask Honorable to define the interference or economic sabotage. Let him give us elements as examples. That's a comment there from another listener. Unfortunately, he did not leave a name. Then somebody writes in and says, hello, Kenneth, thank you for the program. How can Honorable Kajwengye talk challenging a law in court as if it is very simple? Don't we have people in jail arrested under the UPDF Act that the court had nullified? You can't trust the NRM regime. That's Henry listening in from Banda. Michael Mkwana writes in and says, I'm still trying to figure out why the government had to wait until now to enact this so-called sovereignty law. Saying, Michael, my only consolation is that seasons come and seasons go. Well, that's some of the feedback we are getting. The bill was seemingly passed before it was brought in Parliament. It only came there for fulfillment of the provisions of the law, not an independent manner it should have been. Well, that's the feedback that we are getting from the listener. Very quickly, if you can respond to some of the issues, because we are also running out of time.
It is not entirely true that the bill was passed before it came to Parliament. Of course, that's also, unless he too was not paying keen attention on, because just Phillip Karugaba has acknowledged that indeed there was a process. There was we went through a process until we came to presenting a report. Secondly, why don't we also be open? When you say government and then the people, even those who are in the government are people. Even those members of cabinet are people. Secondly, those in Parliament, majority of them are from the ruling party. That is a fact. They go every 5 years and their mandate is renewed. So all you have to do is to go and mobilize. Yeah, otherwise, once they're in
even
power,
if you have the majority in Parliament,
yes,
you should legislate with reason.
Absolutely. In fact, as they say, the majority will have their way, but minority should have their say. For me, that's
a feeling that there's tyranny of numbers. That's how they describe it.
So what can you do about that? It is a responsibility, a cardinal responsibility of government, say cabinet, to come up with laws, and cabinet cannot pass laws. It brings it's a proposal, a bill. It takes it to people's representatives. People's representatives are members of Parliament, and in Parliament you have you have all political parties represented therein, all political persuasions. It is also utterly wrong to say that they were bribed. I condemn that. You cannot bribe members of Parliament to pass a law.
Well,
you saw what we went.
We've been hearing some stories.
They are utterly false.
Some people who are leaving Parliament, they were defeated in an election, and they are getting a kitty.
Yes. And
they are getting a package.
And why now? For me, the legislative agenda of Parliament is still ongoing. And the leader of opposition, the leader of government business, brings in a business of government at any time he or she wants. So there's nothing so strange. It doesn't matter that you must pass this particular law at this time, but unless you are talking about tax bills.
All right.
Unless you're talking about budget.
All right. We are coming to the end of this show.
Thank you.
Your closing remark.
My closing remark is that as a chairperson of legal and, or chairperson of defense and internal affairs that spearheaded this bill, I have learned and I have seen that we have set a precedent. And I say it openly, that there's going to be a demand in future that all other pieces of legislation be put forward for people to make their contributions. We have done it. We have seen humongous concerns of people, the likes of Phillip Karugaba. So they will be looking forward that any other piece of legislation we come up with, we toss it to them and they give us their views. As to whether we shall sustain that, that's a topic for another day.
Phillip, your closing remark very quickly in a few seconds.
Thank you. There are 4 reasons why this bill will be nullified. First, the certificate of financial implications by Amos Lugolobi was a dud. It was a chichupuli. 2, the Speaker did not ascertain quorum in the House at the time of voting. 3, failure to withdraw the bill after substantial amendment. Then 4, the multiple constitutional infringements of clauses in the bill. Okay? I'm surprised that Honorable Kajwengye can say that they pass laws without consulting the people. If he gives us the list of those laws, we will move to nullify them. And thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Lukwago. Thank you very much, Honorable Kajwengye. It's been a pleasure and an honor.
All right, thank you very much, dear guests, for sparing time to be here, and thank you very much to the listener for listening in but also contributing to this discussion. Tomorrow, 2 hours of analysis of the top events of the week. Do not miss. We will have people to reflect on this process in Parliament, but also other issues. So do join me then tomorrow. But up next, we have the news in English with Miss Josephine Dagano.